Hello and welcome on today's GoldenMuseTV show with myself, ChriSOULa Sirigou, the Golden Muse. And on today's show, my guest is Ysanne. Hello, Ysanne. Welcome.
Hello, ChriSOULa. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you for saying yes, because my guest said, thank you so much for inviting me. But I said, it's not just the invitation, it's actually you said yes and you turned up. That's the important thing.
I did. I'm here.
Well, let's talk about a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your journey. And on today's Soulful Musings, we're going to be talking about something that is very, very special to me. I love the connection we have with the universe, with the cosmos, the solar system. And with the system I work, the calendar system, we also work with astrology. Not because I'm an astrological, person or haven't studied astrology, but in the system we do have the certain planets that are actually working with your date of birth. But Ysanne will actually going to tell us more about that and the actual insight you can get from the timing. Yes. So also we're going to talking about something that is very intriguing. The actual what we call your inner timekeeper. So that's something that is really speaks to me too. So and more will be revealed very soon. Okay, we're gonna be in the flow. So wonderful, Ysanne. So you're the author of. Would you show us your book?
With pleasure.
Yeah.
With pleasure. Yes.
Yeah, the time catcher. Yes.
How to time your actions to turn challenges into opportunities. Yes.
Beautiful. Yeah, because sometimes we see the challenge and we think, why is it happening to me, or what can I, why another obstacle in my way? But it could be something very, very good for you. Like a challenge. It doesn't always have to be a bad thing. Okay, so let's go back to you, Ysanne. Let's start from what actually prompted you or inspired you to be an astrological forecaster, and be involved with astrology. Really,
we're going back a long time.
You look very young to me, Ysanne.
I'll come again. I was always interested in the subject. As a child, I always thought that most children do this, but as soon as I'm outdoors, I look up at the stars at night.
Yes.
I was fascinated, had a book on astronomy, a child's book, and what I loved above all was stories, mythology. My parents were both readers, and my mother had a love of myths, Greek myths in particular, and it took me obviously a long while to realise that they are all interconnected, and that our ancestors wove their own personal stories onto the heavens. They saw patterns. They didn't just use the stars and the planets for direction, for timings, for tilling the soil, for festivals. They saw their own stories within those patterns. And that's why today we have the names of the constellations. The planets, the word planet means wanderers, because the planets move, as we know. And it really is a very, very, very old science and art. It was the first star religion, the first science, and it hasn't really changed that much in some respects. A big division came in the Age of Reason, around about the 1700s, when astrology and astronomy got disconnected, okay? But that's another story. But it's never gone away. And I felt from a very young age I wanted a purpose. And I wanted to work with people. I wanted to, not exactly save the planet, but I certainly wanted a reason to be here, though I had no idea what that was. I was brought up in a family who were very open to spiritual things, spiritualism in particular, the exploring of the meaning of life. And I suppose for a while I thought I could be a psychologist, but my maths was very poor. And so I didn't. I read a lot. As I said, I loved the stories. I started to recognize at a young age that the stories of the myths from whatever culture mirror our own journeys, our own relationships, our own crises, our own foibles, our weaknesses and strengths. I knew I was born under the sign of Scorpio, November, early November. I knew that. So, of course, I read lots about it. During my 20s, I trained with the arts as an actress for a while. And I ended up doing lots of different jobs, lots of voluntary work. I wanted to be an explorer, but physically I wasn't strong enough. And I didn't realize all the things, and this is very important, ChriSOULa, all the things we want to do or have half started never go away completely. They come back in some form in the future.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I
Yes.
ended up being a navigator with the stars, but not so much on Earth. And the acting I didn't pursue, I put into my workshops where the horoscope of a person or business is brought alive through dynamics such as movement, colour, storytelling. So you see, everything comes around.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted this purpose, and I trained as an astrologer. This was before there were computers. This was back in the mid-70s. And I'm no good at maths, remember? But I wanted to do this. You see, you may relate with this. We all can have a passion, and therefore we overcome what we think we're no good at to be able to have that passion.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
definitely I did the logarithms, the maths, struggled and struggled and struggled. And then I got it. And I decided to do this for 1 year because I wanted to be self-employed. Like many of us would think, sometimes employment can be very petty, can be unfair. It can be very difficult, the people you work with. But I certainly wanted to do my thing. So in 1979, I took it up for a living, went self-employed, thinking 1 year, that's okay. Then I'll do something else. An explorer, remember. But somehow, and I do not say this lightly, it chose me. I don't like a lot of New Age speak, but it really did. And when something's right, ChriSOULa, when something's right, we get a lot of signs that we're on the right track, don't we?
Absolutely, you do. Yeah.
And we can resist it. We have wonderful free will. We want to call it wonderful.
Yes.
We can go against the tide. And quite quickly, I was giving talks, which was very scary at the beginning, and readings of clients. And I still, not long ago, had a client come back to me from 30 odd years ago. He found me, the wonders of Google. Didn't have email addresses back then. And that's wonderful to feel that people can still use that guidance. And I treat my work as one of my best friends, walks beside me. I've got great respect for it. And it's a wonderful system of thought, of soul, to put many things onto, to relate to in life. So over the decades, I've used it with drama, I've used it with colour, I've used it with healing. And more recent times, I realised if we forget star signs, you know, the sun sign we're born under, for a moment, and of course...
Mine is Cancer.
Water sign, yes. Water
Yes.
baby.
Hello.
You know, water baby, Scorpio. If we forget that for a moment, we share those qualities with everybody else born under that sign. It's our core essence. We can look at the movements of the planets, their angles, and that is all about timing. The moon takes a month, right, to go through the zodiac. Mars takes nearly 2 years. Jupiter takes 12 years. We have timings, and I believe that astrology is the queen of timing. And we can choose to go against it. But if we recognize from the moment we're born, whether we know consciously that time or not, or have it written down, that time of birth sets cycles into motion, the cosmic clocks, if you like, outer and inner, as above, so below. And cycles are set into motion, and we actually do know in our hearts and bodies the right timing for change. The mind is a great thing, but it can be a great destroyer as well, the left brain. And I think the body and the heart never lies. They never lie. And we know that when we get ill or have an accident, maybe our body's telling us we've needed to slow down a bit. Yes?
Yeah, yes.
And maybe sometimes we can avoid that by listening to those tides within us. And the heart doesn't lie, but it has a lot of fear there as well. And we listen to our brain more. So my work very much is to help people with their timing at many levels. And I think if we work with our timing, then life becomes a lot simpler and a lot easier. And that's why I love what I do, as you can tell.
I love the actual word you use about the tides inside us. Because the tides are a natural phenomenon. They are actually, as far as I know, regulated by the moon. But equally, we do have tides inside us that actually we have the moods and we have the ups and downs, and you don't know what to do with the way we feel sometimes, and we have some explosions and we have some tears coming down, or completely, not knowing what to do with ourselves and not talking to anybody. So yeah, the tides can be equally important to understand where we are now, and it's really important to connect with the state of these tides. That's the emotional force of these tides are, when they're coming in with a lot of force and then we're actually retreating, and then where you left on again where you were before, what do you do with that silence, with the stillness? That's the way I interpret it anyway. That's my my interpretation.
And I think it's like the weather, it will pass, the clouds do pass, but we fear with our brains they're not going to pass. And that's when we try and force things, or we're afraid. We build up fortifications around our hearts, we build up the wars within us, instead of bringing these different emotions to the peace table, as I call it, in the heart, and understanding that our moods are, our emotions are like the weather band, as you say. And some of us are more tuned to that than others. And certainly with the birth chart we're born with, all the planets are, particularly the moon, I think, in this matter, we do get an opportunity to understand that rather than saying we're moody, that we are colourful beings of emotions, and they make us real. They're like the rainbow, otherwise we're just black and white. It's like when we see people wearing black all the time, they don't realise that they're absorbing all the stuff around them, and they're not giving out any message. And when we instinctively choose a colour, we just feel drawn to wearing one. It's like we need that message, we need that expression, and that can show up in the chart that day as well.
Yes. Well, we do choose, or we're drawn to the colors for different specific reasons. We may not know about here, but our bodies are really drawn to them. Or even if I go deeper, even your soul can tell you what color you need at that particular moment. So it's fascinating how color works, and I like the way you actually use it, instead of using the word moody that could have a negative connotation. Is actually, yes, we are colorful, because I do use color a lot in my life. I love color. Yes. apart from working with color as a therapy, as a tool. I do love color in overall, and become more conscious of what colors are there, in nature, particularly now springtime is fascinating. But also using, let's say, we're colorful beings. So basically we've got different shades, right? So that's wonderful to say that. Now I'd like to come to, because I'm really intrigued to hear from you what, when you talk about your inner navigator, is this another way to call it, like your inner voice, or your intuition, or your in alignment with your spirit, with your Holy Spirit? Is that something along these lines, or something completely different?
I think there's many ways of looking at an inner navigator. At the end of the day, these are words. Yes. Imaginative words as well. But if you think what a navigator is on the land, on the sea, they're definitely at sea, and in times gone by, particularly with stars, were a very big part. I see the inner navigator as linked with timing and how I use it. There are many other tools, intuition, as you say quite rightly, looking at the omens, the auspices, the signs around us, like tribal people did and do, to know the way. The navigator means being in touch with our inner compass. And it's so easy to lose touch with that. Now, we all know we go out on a journey, and maybe we're in a car, the sat-nav's wonky, GPS is wonky, the map's old. We ask someone the way, and they're eager to help us. And they mean well, but they send us the wrong way, right? It can happen quite often. So we have to stop. We have to get our bearings again, reset the sat-nav, whatever, look at the map more carefully. And that's an analogy. But I think in life, when we're listening to other people too much, there's times, of course, to have our teachers, to have advice, but it's so easy to hand our authority over to others as well.
Yeah.
And stopping for a while. Pause is so important. No piece of music or dance is as lovely as it could be without pauses. Same with conversation.
Yes.
Same with our patterns in the day. The same with lovemaking. The same with lots of things. And pauses are important. So stopping to take our bearings is important, and that's where the inner navigator comes in. Okay, and certainly I have a kind of a head start with using astrology in somebody's birth chart and my own to see when are the best times for action, pause, stopping, restarting. I do believe we can learn to tidy up, to hone better our inner navigator. We just have to be aware it's there and that we haven't got to be perfect. I mean, I think we make a big mistake when we try to be perfect at everything and we paper over the cracks. But as a songwriter once said, ring the bells that still can ring, forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything. That's where the light gets in. So we need to have a little bit of chaos. And I liken the moon, thinking you're a moon baby, being a Cancerian.
I am, yeah.
That we have 3 days, what we call the dark moon, before the new moon. And in times gone by, in certain communities today, that dark moon period is very honoured. They allow a little bit more chaos, a bit more retreat, doing less, waiting, pending. And then with the new moon, it's a new cycle.
Yes.
For that month. And I think we need to, all of us can find out when those 3 days are, literally the 3 days before the new moon. That's a simple navigation tool.
They actually starting tomorrow because the new moon is on Tuesday. Yes.
Well, yeah, Tuesday's quite a big day, actually, astrologically.
It is, yes.
Yeah.
We're not going to be talking about that now because I would like to talk more generally about you and your passion and what the timing and the navigator we're talking about, and actually how we can maximize life by being more connected with the cycles of life as well. And what you did mention about pressing pause.
Pressing pause, yes.
Yeah, reflection, really acknowledging, validating, appreciating that sometimes unconsciously, I think, we don't do because we are all feeling the kind of pressure to really do a lot and then give a lot or think a lot. And then when we find the moment that we don't do anything, we have a bit of time just to chill. Well, actually, I started questioning ourselves, was I supposed to do something?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's very true, ChriSOULa, and I think that we need to allow, going back to allowing ourselves to have inner rest and to know the world won't forget us. The pressure that we put, we don't just get pressure from the outside world and about money and about what our employers think and so forth. We have so much inner pressure, what I call the inner critic, which is linked very much with one of the planets, Saturn, where we get our word father time or chronic from or chronological. Greek word for Saturn was Chronos. Anyway,
yes.
aside there.
No, it's great to talk about Greek. You're talking to a Greek person here.
I know. Actually, the Greek myths are amazing, how human they are. Yes. And if they can be human, the gods and goddesses, so are we. And they, in a way, they live within us, what psychologists call the archetypes. And we have all of those when we're born. And how they're placed in our birth charts, the signs of the zodiac they're in, the angles they form to one another, the strengths and weaknesses, make us up to be a human being. And it's up to us what we do with that. We don't have to be a victim. But somebody once said that if we don't find time for recreation, to recreate, sooner or later we're going to be obliged to find time for illness. So I think we can not blame ourselves, but we do need to look at ourselves when we see, I can keep going for that bit longer. The world won't last if I don't do those things. And I know that if I pace myself, literally pace myself more, keep things simple, then actually everything gets done. And people say, oh, I haven't got time for that, we've got too much to do. That's not actually true. By actually being with our bodies more, our hearts, with what we're doing, things actually, time spreads out. And we were talking just before the interview started about what is time, and I said, well, we'd have to ask Einstein.
Yes.
Time is, there's a lot of books at the moment, non-fiction and fiction about time. There's a wonderful novel called How to Stop Time by Matt Haig. Thoroughly recommend it. Okay. Somebody who just lives for many centuries. How do you stop time? Yes. Anyway, it's very interesting about time.
Good.
So anyway, apart from that, time is very subjective. Sometimes it goes so fast. Where do those few hours go? Another time, I'm sure you've experienced this. You think an hour's gone by. Maybe you're totally happy doing something. You're not bored. And you look up, look at the clock, and only 10 minutes have gone. That's strange. That is strange. To be in attunement with time, in tune, is very important. Some of us appear to have that better than others. Children, I think, do naturally until education can get a little bit in the way. So as adults, it's so important to, as you say, to pause, to take stock, to feel the part of us whilst we're in bodies, which we are, which are part of nature. Our souls, which I believe in a soul, comes from elsewhere, but our bodies come from nature. The word nature means to be born, natal, same thing. So honouring our bodies and our rhythms, watching the seasons, watching the patterns, looking at the proportions, even mathematically, in plant growth is quite extraordinary. The planets and the DNA link with something called the Fibonacci series.
Yes.
The golden mean. Okay.
Yes,
if any of your listeners haven't heard of that, do ask them to Google it because it's fascinating.
Yeah, particularly the rose. The rose is a beautiful, energetically speaking, roses. I mean, I'm really drawn to flowers overall, but rose is just really pure. The energy of the rose, and because it's exactly what you said. And there's I've got a fabulous. Actually, I remember I've got an interview with the rose alchemist, and I'm going to be actually bringing that into my now think about it. Okay.
Something else with the rose as well, because with like sunflower walls, like in the Fibonacci series, it's very simply for people listening, it's like 0 and 1 is 1, 1 and 2 are 3, 3 and 2 are 5, 5 and 3 are 8. It keeps moving up, and you see that in the body proportions, you see that in antlers, you see that in nautilus shells, in the rose, you see that in the old sacred architecture.
Yes, sacred geometry we call it as well. Yes.
You actually feel so much healthy. But the rose, Venus, beautiful Venus, and it's one of its symbols is the rose. Venus has an interesting cycle, and I won't go into the details mathematically, but over an 8-year period, it can actually form the proportions. You've done this on a computer, the image of the rose and the pentagram, the 5, the figure of man or woman, the 5. And it's absolutely beautiful to see how she, in her movements, when she goes what we call retrograde, appearing to move backward for a while, in these cycles, how that beautiful image of the rose appears. So there we are, that's something else. So it's all within us and the heart.
Yes, that's why the rose also and Venus, they are, personifying, if you like, unconditional love, or I don't know if it's unconditional, but definitely the essence of love is both, linked with Venus as the planet, and also Venus as the goddess back then, but also connect with the rose. All of this, coming together. Beautiful.
And how we feel about that, because we're not terribly good at love. We don't really understand it fully. And unlike nature, when we had that earlier the year, didn't we? The primroses and snowdrops come up, dollop of snow comes, but they just come up again.
Yes.
As human beings, if we get hurt, our Venus part says, oh, I'm not going to open up to that again. I'm going to withdraw. And that's our free will.
Yeah.
So I think love is eternal, perennial as the grass, as they say, but it's so important to be able to dissolve those fortifications and to be able to be open to loving, obviously to loving ourselves, because Venus was all about the balance of giving and receiving. Aphrodite.
Yeah, relationships as well, of course. How to that brings us naturally to a lovely sort of connection with the other human beings, connection with yourself, but also connection with the others. And then the give and receive part is really fascinating.
Venus rules creativity. So when we're, I always saying, when we're being creative, we're being joyful, and when we're feeling joyful, we want to be creative. Very much an orange color as well there, which is the playing child. And I always think that if the Creator gave us life, then we're being creative. That's when we're most alive. So we don't have to fall in love or to get lots of money to feel happy and joyful. We can actually find it in small things.
Well, I like to bring, since we talk about love and I like to bring in the conversation the color pink, because in the system color mirrors, pink is the color of unconditional love. So and then, yes, and then it is about for me it's about giving and receiving, but they also, whatever giving and receiving, the giving part is done in a more conscious way. Yeah, so sometimes we tend to overgive, and then of course the overgiving part gives us exhaustion, or come to a point of burnout, or asking ourselves, so why haven't not received anything back? And then of course we get really annoyed or angry or frustrated, and this is not a nice place to be in, although all of these are natural emotions, but this is not a nice place to be in. We'd love to be in a state of like being really excited about life, being like positive and joyful, and then instead of questioning yourself, why have I not received, it's just say how much you've got around you, and then be happy with what you've got around you, and reach out to nature that is abundant. It's got so much to give you.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. Because I think also people who are total givers all the time, it isn't easy for other people to give back to them. And although that can appear to be unselfish, it can actually be a little bit selfish, because they're protecting their own vulnerability, not being vulnerable to receive. And I think it's so vital to be able to do both. It is about balance of giving and receiving. People want to give, they want to be needed too. And I think Venus is a very, very multifaceted lady, and money, creativity, nature, love. But I always say she doesn't mind being overworked, because she loves what she does. It is all about loving what we do, and knowing when we need to give time to ourselves as well. Yeah. So I don't know whether that's still linking with your question to me.
No, it's all blends in naturally, beautifully. So when we trust, when actually we come to the point of trust, because we did talk about what the inner navigator is, but why is it important to trust that navigator?
Trust is an interesting word. We can have gullible trust. It's like giving a child a box of matches to be near a fire with. Maybe a 2-year-old, you're going to have a problem. You've got to have discerning trust. And it is a hard condition, literally. At a deep level, a gut level, that something is right. Stubbornness can be useful when it's just knowing something isn't right. It can also mean fear, but again, it's knowing that difference. But when trust comes in, you think about a trapeze artist. If they don't trust their partner who's going to catch them as they swing, well, we know what can happen, safety net or not. And it's trusting that timing, trusting you know what you're doing, whether it's something you've learnt or you're operating from that inner navigator. You're getting yourself centered rather than distracting yourself. Again, like the trapeze artist, but the runner at the beginning of a race, there's a false start, or a diver, and there's a false start in the competition, it has to start again. That moment of the start is very important, being prepared. Be prepared. And breathing comes into that.
Breathing?
Oh, definitely. I think at
Yes.
any start, if we didn't breathe and we're born, that first breath, that's why, when a baby's born, it can have a span to get it breathing.
Yes.
If you don't breathe, you're not going to live. And breathing in from life, trusting that, and then exhaling it.
Mm-hmm.
So metaphorically, that's an important energy at the start of something. We do hold our breath, or take a big breath, and we're going to be bold and do something.
Mm-hmm. You
No,
do.
but no, trust is very important with timing, obviously with the arts, with movement. Trusting that we actually know, not exactly how it's going to pan out, but we know it's time for change. I can see it in somebody's birth chart. I would never say to somebody, you've got to do this or you shouldn't do that. But if I talk about the timing of something, they'll say, yes, that's what they've been feeling. Yes, they needed to wait a bit, or now is the time, or we ought to create a bridge for a while. And that's where the beauty of astrology, the language of the stars, astrologos, comes in, because you know your own chart within you from when you're born. And although life interferes with it, you can get back on that map, that navigator,
Mm-hmm.
that steerer, that compass. And it's just like metaphorically taking that breath and relaxing into a deeper knowing. We've all got that ability. We've all got it.
Mm.
So knowing that time is right.
Yeah.
And you know what? If we miss our cue, it's not the end of the world. It's in a play, a drama, it helps if the actor gets his or her cue right, or the dancer, or the musician. But it's still not the end of the world. It's human.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why people learn their craft, so their timing is good. Yes. And so how do we learn our craft with ourselves? By listening. By listening to that inner timekeeper. Meditation can help, even just for a few minutes before starting your day, before starting an activity. It gets you in the groove, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
And you might say this is very simple, but most beautiful things are simple.
Exactly. Exactly that, Ysanne. You will find me talking about that life can be so easy. Life can be easily enjoyable.
So much
Yeah,
conditioning.
but it's something that we have been conditioned to believe, that things have to be hard to be good.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't have to be that. And that's part of my mission, in a way, to educate, starting from my own evolution, understanding more of where I come from, and pass it on through these conversations we have, through the work I do, through
Yes.
my training, the courses I do. So it's about, yes, everything we share so far. It is about, yeah, the timing is also, for me, is about flow, it's about ease, it's about joy. Yeah.
And you mentioned the word trust when you said that we make things hard for ourselves. We don't trust things. It's
Yes.
actually simple. A lot of that's to do with our upbringing. Let's face it, our culture, religion, sometimes our education. But in a way, I think our souls choose those learning curves, those challenges, to come back to the garden, as the song goes, to be back there within ourselves. And again, I think trust and our own authority come into play, trusting our own authority. The people who don't have a great sense of their own inner authority, and some of us carry that through life, are people who kowtow to authority a lot, or they rebel. And I think that when you have a sense of your own authority, which can be firm but gentle, you don't meet controlling people, you don't have authority issues so much. They're our teachers until we realize that actually we are free inside.
Yes.
But sometimes it comes with age, but sometimes elderly people don't have any of that anyway, and sometimes young people do have it. It's not necessarily a chronological matter.
No, it doesn't have to be age based. No, I
No.
don't think that this wisdom, or this inner knowing, or trust, because sometimes we say trust your gut instinct, don't we say that?
Yes.
No.
Well, nature has to trust, doesn't it?
Yes. Yes.
And timing comes into trust. I think the two run alongside each other very, very beautifully.
Yeah.
Very beautifully. Yeah. And we are living in times now, I think, when things have got very uncertain. And with uncertainty comes fear. And with this fear, the timing gets very, very blocked. We don't we freeze things. We freeze.
Yeah. Would you also say that timing is sometimes there's a particular in the system I work with. We work also with archangels, and the archangel Metatron. The message is the time is now. So basically, instead of leaving it for later, instead of postponing it or whatever, just seize the moment, seize the day. From that point, that kind of timing as well.
It is, but I think there's a difference between spontaneity and impulsiveness.
Oh yes, of course.
Well, impulsiveness, you can be bottling something up or be, okay, I can't do it, I want to do it, let's do it now, no, let's. And then we do it impulsively and it goes wrong and we think, aha, that makes sense, now I won't do that again. But spontaneity means knowing that time is right. It just happens naturally. It often sometimes just happens to us. We find ourselves doing something, saying something we hadn't intended, and it's perfect timing. The Greeks, come back to the Greeks, have another word for time. We have chronological time, clock time. And they had a word called, I can't pronounce it right, kairos or kairos,
Kairos, yes.
And it called the quality of time or sacred time, outside of time. And maybe there's a lot of little steps leading up to that moment. Or maybe something major happens in our life where we think, it's too big for me, the event. And we kind of hand it over. It's like we're like a child again, we know nothing. And then time seems to step in and magically work for us. The right things come into play, fall into place. And that's a trust.
Yes, well, I have experienced a few occasions in my life when, for example, when I was living in London, I decided I felt more and more, it could be an impulse actually, but I felt more and more that London was a beautiful place for me and I loved it. It had fabulous experiences, it gave me a lot. But there was a point where I said, I actually need to move on. There was a point that I really felt that. I could have chosen, it was because there were opportunities to stay there, and I also was offered another job with more money, and the temptation was great. But I really connected with my inner navigator, or the and then I wanted to make a move, and it was decision making for me. And then the job appeared when I wanted to go and live in France, because that's where my soul, in a way, was actually pushing me towards. And things were falling into place, and the interview happened, and I was successful. And then there was another interview, and I had to choose which one. But things are falling into place when, in a way, yeah.
Well, the body has to grow in its own way. Nature does, so we have to understand it in terms of changes in our lives. But maybe there's many routes to a destination. But do we want a rocky one, a boring motorway one? Do we want a pleasant one? What route do we change when we get to a crossroad? And the word crossroad means crisis and opportunity as well in some language. It's only in hindsight do we see it maybe as opportunity. It's hard to get out of our own way. And I think particularly nowadays, where there's a lot of not knowing what's around the corner, a lot of mixed messages, a lot of fear-mongering in the media. It's always been there. But
yes,
I think
of course. But yeah, it is. It's fascinating how to become more, in tune with what's happening around you, but also what's happening inside you.
Yeah. Yes, and sometimes we can get scared, but we can see something as exciting and take some risks rather than freezing, whether it's our assets, literally financially, or our emotions change. And I think it's a very rewarding time period now. And you know what, I'm sure you'll agree with me, and some of the listeners, that viewers, that quite honestly, when a crisis does occur, we think, oh, I didn't want that to happen, to say the least. Maybe our partner walks out on us, or we lose our home, or we lose our job, and many other ideas like that.
Of course, yes.
And what I find interesting is that if we can just trust that process, it's not fate, it's not bad luck, that a part of us we never would have aired before like an actor coming on stage. It wasn't ready to do that part, but the actor who was going to do it fell ill or whatever and has to play the part and wears that costume. But a part of us, the unlived part of us, which may have walked beside us but never needed to be used, that can mean a talent, it can mean a personality trait, gets used. And isn't that beautiful? It may never have had the opportunity to otherwise, whether that's courage, a new talent skill we learn, whatever it may be, we bring it on stage. And the timing is right. And again, it's only by looking back do we know that.
In a way, you're all invited to be part of the stage of life, in a way, isn't it? This invitation is open to every single one of you. It's not like the prerogative only of just 10 people or 100 people. It's for all of you, the stage of life. And whether you step up and you say yes to absorb more of the magic of life, or more of giving away more of your own essence, like giving away in the most positive way, like sharing it with others, then the choice is yours. And yes, as you said, the crossroads, there is always fear, the opportunity, the possibility of saying yes to more or holding back and not. But I hope that you have received some wonderful insights and inspiration from these conversations today with Ysanne Louise. And it is wonderful. Thank you so much, Ysanne. I thoroughly enjoyed our conversations, as I call them, soulful musings. Yes, bringing the word muse and musings in what I offer, what I create as well, and it is a co-creation as well, being in conversation with yourself and with so many other holistic well-being and. It's holistic well-being educators, but also people that they want to bring the change they want to see in the world as well. So it's not, we're walking our talk, and that's what I like, coming from a place of integrity. That's what I like to see it, exploring life, life explorers as we are. Thank you so much, Ysanne. Thank you.
Thank you, ChriSOULa.